So this is another session in our Acufil tool. And what you all can see on my screen is that I have a little layout that I have made using some of the chain link quilting designs that are built into the program. So this is actually just a little bit of a deviation from one of the exercises that's actually in our Genome 15,000 manual, not the workbook, but the manual. And in the Quilt Maker edition, which is the machine that I have, in my printed manual, this exercise begins on page 158. And it may be different in the manual that you have. But what I decided that I would do actually is I'm going to just walk backwards and show you how it is that I created this layout, and also doing it by following step by step in what the manual says about it. Okay, so one of the things that I've done on my computer actually is that in my instruction book, I've opened it up here on the screen of my computer so that we can actually page through here if I feel like I need to just kind of go back and forth a little bit. So like I said, the Acufil quilting program comes in right after the instructions about how to do some layouts and things like that in the embroidery edit mode of the sewing machine. So that's what you're looking for when you're looking at your manual. Okay, so here it is, Acufil quilting with the hoop ASQ22. Now, I don't know that I've ever mentioned this to you before, but the thing about the Acufil program is it is going to be um, trying to work from the viewpoint that you are using that ASQ22 size hoop. And the reason why is because this is the hoop, as we look at the picture here on the screen, that is just that one layer hoop, and it's using the magnets that came with it, and they're the great big thick magnets, and they're not the small ones that are used on the other embroidery hoops. And so this is assuming that what you're primarily using this hoop for is quilted objects. In other words, any time that you've got several layers with a quilt bat in the middle and trying to hold them all together to do some embroidery and or quilting designs on them. So the other thing I want to just mention about it is that it's not just specifically for quilted objects. You know, there's a lot of times when this is actually a really nice setup also for regular embroidery designs. Kind of depends on what you're working on. And, you know, this would be a time, of course, when your stabilized fabric would have to be substantial enough that it would hold it nice and securely inside of these with these the magnets that hold the whole setup together. So the book is going to give us some information here about preparing your quilt and how we're going to start using the program. So this preparing the quilt layers here, it's telling us that, you know, you're going to want to open up your program, which comes as part of the Horizon Link Suite program. And as we've already covered before, there's going to be several different areas in this program that are going to do a variety of different things regarding making quilting designs for our machine. So the first section that's in the manual, as well as what we talked about in a previous video, is all about the Acufil designs, which are also known as the stipple fills. I wanted to draw your attention actually to this um, part that's here talking about printing up your templates and the importance of doing that. So what you're looking at on the screen right now is it's telling us to go ahead and print this design out. And depending on the size of your quilt block that you have designed in this section of the program, your paper pieces, you might have two pieces of paper that are going to need to be cut apart and taped together. So this is the instruction that's here about how to do that. And one of the things that it is going to tell us is that part of what gets printed on your template is going to be a little dotted line that's going to go all the way around the outside edge of the Acufil that you've designed, and you're going to want to cut that apart on that dotted line because that is the outside perimeter of your quilt block. And then you're going to go ahead and you're going to tape those together as accurately as you can, and then you'll be using that template to help you set up, you know, how it is that you're going to be using it on your actual quilted project. All right, so that's that first section of the item of the workbook. And then the next section is going to be talking a little bit about how to hoop that fabric. And one of the things that you are going to want to make sure you use is that heavy plastic grid to help hold the quilt down inside of the hoop. So you're going to kind of push down on that before you attach your little clamps, your magnetic clamps. Another little tip about the magnetic clamps is that you are going to try to put them on there from the outside of the hoop toward the inside of the hoop, because that also helps to control some of that the bulk, and it also keeps that quilt from popping out of the hoop. All right, so the next section of this manual is going to talk about how to set up, not only just set up, but how you're going to take this over into your machine and how you're going to stitch it out. So one of the things that I do like to recommend to everybody is that you either turn your one stitch stop on in your machine and probably turn your cutters off so that it does not cut your thread at the end of the um, embroidery design. That's going to give us the opportunity to not only draw that bobbin thread up to the top of our fabric so that we've got a long tail, but also at the end of that design. And then you will be able to thread those tails onto a regular needle, and you can bury them in that quilt sandwich. That's going to give you really nice starts and stops on there. So I'm just going to page on through here. This next set of the instructions is talking about what you do if you have done a big layout here in your design and your very last little piece, as we've talked about before, is going to be just a little bit smaller because of all the shrinkage that happens when you're quilting your project. And you might need to open your design up again in that adjust last pattern size section of the program and measure your section that needs to be filled in and just plop in those parameters, and your last little bit will be ready for you to take it to your embroidery machine and embroider it out. The next section of the program is going to be talking about the creating original Acufil designs. And this is the one where, as you can see on the screen here, this is where my layout came from. I'm just going to pop over there. So this is what I came up with based on, let's see, where's it at? Based on the instructions that are here. So I did change mine just a little bit. I didn't put this row of chains in the middle of my block. I very well could have, but I decided I would just do a little border around here. So let's walk through what this is telling us to do. We'll do this little setup first, and then we'll work on the next exercise that uses the leaf design in the second part.